Ever since I can remember, video games have always been a major part of my life. Some of my earliest memories are of being a kid playing Sly Cooper and Pokemon. Now, years later, as a 23-year-old, games still have a big hold on me. Even though I don't have as much time as I used to, I can always find time to play a game that I look forward to each year. So today, I decided I'm going to compile a list of my top 10 favorite games of all time. As a heads up, these are my personal favorite games, so yeah, nostalgia and replayability will have a big impact on the games I choose and how the order goes, but overall, it's all subjective anyway. Out of the hundreds of games I've played in my lifetime, it's hard to narrow down just 10 of them, but I spent a lot of time thinking about this, so I finally come up with a good consideration of games that I feel like perfectly solidify what my top 10 are. And starting at number 10, we have Devil May Cry 4. Although I do believe Devil May Cry 5 is probably the best of the series, Devil May Cry 4 is still my favorite. What makes the entire franchise so great is the mixture of gameplay and hype moments, music. I mean, the soundtrack in every Devil May Cry game is incredible, pretty great. But in Devil May Cry 4, we are introduced with a new character, which is Nero. And in most games or media, introducing a new character after having a very loved protagonist throughout most of the series is definitely going to be iffy with a lot of people. I can't even remember if during the time period a lot of people liked Nero or not, but more so now, a lot of people have kind of warmed up to the idea of Nero. But me, I loved him since the beginning. Probably my second favorite character in the franchise behind Dante. And when we were introduced to him during the opening cutscene and fight between him and Dante, I remember just when I first played it as a kid, it was one of the coolest things ever. Years went by and I played it again, and it was like, I don't know, it was like discovering fire for me or something. It was really cool, great aesthetic, great music, great cinematics. And I feel like Nero fits perfectly into the role of Dante Hill previously. The unique approach to have Nero's motivation being to seek and kill Dante for revenge is great as a beginning plot point. It kind of makes the new character still involved with the story of the old character, so we kind of have a little bit of both. And I played that game numerous of times since. At number 9 is one of my favorite games as a child, Pokemon Soul Silver. Honestly, it's still one of my favorite games now. Haven't played it in a little bit, probably about a year or so, but it's a game I always find myself going back to. Whenever I have an itch for Pokemon, it's between this and Pokemon Platinum and Diamond, just back to back. So I remember when this game first released in 2009 and I got it. I was so happy. Like, it was one of the greatest Christmas gifts ever for me. I remember always going to Totodile or Cyndaquil. Really I had a fond love of water type Pokemon, but Cyndaquil, he was like my go-to in that game. I played that game so many times, and Lugia is still one of my favorite legendary Pokemons of all time. Honestly, he probably is my favorite legendary Pokemon. And just, I remember exploring through the entire game, getting through each nook and cranny, and just fully fleshing out the story, catching all the new crazy Pokemon, going at it with Team Rocket. And then I remember when I first beat the game, I was a little bit sad, it was like a guilty pleasure moment. Then finding out there was a whole another section of the game with the Kanto region just made me, even then, I knew this is my favorite Pokemon game. At number 8, we have Skyrim. Now, I remember when I first got Skyrim, I remember there's a pretty interesting story about it. So, I don't know if this is common everywhere, but here where I'm from, I used to go to the library a lot and just rent out games. I remember I saw this game, Skyrim was there, and it was always there, and I used to always see a lot of people talking about it at school, so I decided, you know what, go ahead and check it out, let's see how it's going. And I wasn't really that big into open world games at the time. So this was kind of like a new take for me. And of course, the iconic opening scene when you're on the carriage and eventually get to town and there's attacked by a dragon. I remember thinking like, wow, this is like the coolest thing ever. I love Lord of the Rings and fantasy dragon type worlds. And I feel like this is what I wanted as a kid. I remember after I rented this game out, I only had like 7 days to rent it. I begged my mom to buy this game for me. She finally folded, and I just continued playing it back on PS3. I remember I probably played the game like 2 to 3 times back to back after I beat it. I just started it right up with a new character and then right back into the story again. And I was discovering new things that I missed the first time. And it's just one of those great stories about, I don't know, the Dragonborn and the whole prophecy to defeat Alduin the dragon and to really just help save the world just really stuck with me. And yeah, I even used to just go around. It was the first time I had a game where I actually just crazy enough just kill any NPC and it would affect the story. And I just thought that was wild to me that they really thought the game through. Plus, the ragdoll effects were pretty funny. At number 7 is Budokai Tenkaichi 2. Man, I don't play a lot of fighting games. I do like Mortal Kombat. I've been playing a lot of Mortal Kombat 1 recently. But as a kid, Budokai Tenkaichi 2 was like the greatest thing of all time. I know I just mentioned 3 games under this that I really enjoyed, but at the time, when this game came out, and even years after, I played this game so much. Like, I used to play it all the time by myself, honestly. I would play with other people, cousins and things like that along the way, but it's really one of those games. This is before you can just play online. So I would just spend hours and hours playing by myself. Love Dragon Ball Z just like pretty much every kid in America. I used to just go and play this game whenever I was bored, whenever I was happy, whenever I just wanted something to play. Back then, I didn't get a whole lot of new games very often. So honestly, I would just beat one game and then I just go back to a game I love. And Budokai Tenkaichi 2 was always that game. Plus, I love playing the scene Gohan. At number 6 is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. When Breath of the Wild came out, it honestly shook the gaming community to its core, I believe, and really revolutionized games going forward. I mean, by winning Game of the Year that year, you know that Zelda was always a highly loved property. But after Breath of the Wild, I think it really kind of solidified that the franchise isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Especially with this year's Tears of the Kingdom, it's always been on top and forever be that way. Zelda is my favorite Nintendo franchise, one of my favorite gaming franchises of all time. I'm a pretty big fan of Zelda. My favorite game of the series actually being Majora's Mask. But the reason Majora's Mask isn't in this top 10 like Breath of the Wild is, I just feel like going forward, Breath of the Wild is probably going to surpass Majora's Mask for me. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom can be interchangeable for this, I feel like. But I played Breath of the Wild 2-3 times already, and of course Tears of the Kingdom just came out this year, so it's still kind of fresh on my mind. But man, Breath of the Wild did everything perfect. It was just so much open world expansion, introducing the ideas and concepts of shrines to keep the player engaged and trying to utilize their powers and abilities in intricate ways just to solve through puzzles. It made the experience and gameplay different every time, and no one had 2 similar gameplay experiences. Everybody went into the game and did things their own way, discovered it their own way, and that made the game better for me. By introducing us a world where it's literally your oyster. You can do whatever you want. Essentially, as long as it's within the confines of the game and its mechanics, you can go out and discover something. You can go out and climb to the tallest mountain. You can go out and fight the strongest enemy at the beginning of the game, if you like, if you choose to. Or you can save that for later. It's pretty much whatever you make it. And that's what makes Zelda one of the greatest franchises of all time, and Breath of the Wild in this top 6. But reaching our halfway point, at number 5 is Persona 5. Now, I wasn't always really big in a strategy or a turn-based game. Honestly, especially when I was a child, I didn't like to think too much when I was playing a game. I just like to go in and just give me what the game is, let me explore, and just fight my way through things. But I remember playing, even though I played a lot of games like Pokemon, strategy and turn race is never my thing. Now, back when Persona 5 released, I remember seeing this game all the time. What made me like the game initially was aesthetic. But what turned me off from it was seeing, oh man, it's turn-based combat. I wish that wasn't the thing. But I remember like 6 or 8 months after the game released, I saw it was at Target on sale, and I was like, you know what? I have extra money. This is around the time of my birthday. Like, I'm gonna get this game. If I don't like it, I can just return it. But let's see how it goes. And I fell in love with it. Persona 5 is one of my favorite games of all time. First off, what makes the game so enjoyable to me is I love combat and I love like having action within my game. But with any form of media, story and characters drive everything for me. And man, the story in Persona 5 is so good, and the characters like Ryuji and An and the rest of the crew are just so amazing. This was actually my first ever Persona game I played. So just like a lot of people, I feel like Persona 5 rekindled this franchise and brought a lot of people into it, especially after the years between Persona 5 and 4. And man, like I remember after I beat this game, it took me quite a while because it's a pretty hefty game. There's a lot of content, and I spent over 100 hours just playing through the game, and I haven't done that in one game through one playthrough in a long time. I remember after beating it, I was so satisfied and I was so happy, and I wanted more. And I wanted to look for Persona 4, look for Persona 3, but those games weren't as easily acceptable. So I didn't have the opportunity to play those until quite recently. Currently playing through Persona 4 now, playing Persona 3 already, looking forward to the remake next year. Ever since Persona 5's mainstream success, this franchise keeps expanding, keeps increasing. I mean, we have like 4 different Persona 5 spin-offs. And I've played Strikers, haven't gotten into the chance to play the other ones like Tactica that released earlier this year. But man, this is just a franchise that puts story above everything else. Just the idea of having such a happy tone with engaging characters, happy characters, but behind the scenes, there's a lot of darkness and real world problems that these characters have to face. And just putting these characters in this ideal scenario with these powers that they have, how they choose to use it, and the consequences they face going forward, just made the story amazing. At number 4 is Resident Evil Village. Now, Resident Evil has been a franchise I've been playing my entire life. I started off with Resident Evil 4. That was the first Resident Evil game I ever played. And ever since then, I really love this franchise. I was heavily into Resident Evil 5 as a kid as well, just because even with that game's flaws, the couch co-op made that game so amazing. I remember hours and hours on end just playing Resident Evil 5 with my cousin. When Resident Evil 7 came out, it really did bring the franchise back. It took a very sharp turn by making it first person and giving it more of a creepy, eerie vibe rather than that action-packed third-person shooter that the last few installments had. And I really loved Resident Evil 7, and I was curious to see where they would take this story going forward. And when Resident Evil Village came out, it was like the greatest thing ever for me. I'm really into horror. I love a lot of horror films, and playing Resident Evil games have always gave me that vibe. And seeing this game, for example, just the enemy variety. I love the idea of the werewolf type enemies or the vampire type creatures in the castle or all the monsters that you'll find in different areas. Just made the game just really engaging. A lot of people are familiar with Lady D being kind of like the walking advertisement for this game. She's really popular during the game's early trailers and early demo release. But going throughout the castle and experiencing her part of the game, or even going off into the wilderness and finding all those dolls in that cabin, really made things creepy and eerie. And just a really fun game with a lot of great combat as well. The combat is really what got me into it, because unlike 7, that was one of my main complaints with that game, is that the combat felt a little too stiff and there wasn't too much variety, and the actual enemies you were fighting with the molded weren't really that great. But this game really satisfied me in all those aspects. Resident Evil 8 is my favorite Resident Evil game in the franchise. I can't wait to see more when it comes in the next installment. So as you see through most of my top 10 already, it's been a lot of different games. We're looking at games like Resident Evil, Pokemon, Zelda, Skyrim. All these games are great games, but they're all a lot different. Myself having a really big taste and variety of games that I like really just comes down to what my enjoyment is from those. I gain something different from each game. And starting in my number 3, we have Bloodborne. Now, after I just said all of that, Bloodborne is in my top 3, and it's kind of obvious to see why at this point. Like I said with Resident Evil Village, you have the horror, Lovecraftian side of things. Like something like Breath of the Wild, you have the engaging world where you can go throughout and discover new things. There's one path. You can just go through multiple different areas. And in Bloodborne, what I really enjoy from it is not only is the combat just incredible and engaging, and the world and the environment just so massive and creepy and eerie, but I also feel like there's a lot of great lore and depth that's just hidden within. Like a lot of other From Software games, when you look within the game, there's so much story that's there, so much being told. And Bloodborne is just one of those games that initially, when I first played it, it was really hard to get through it. Not because I didn't enjoy it, but because the game itself is just very difficult. Everyone knows at this point that From Software games have a high increase of difficulty. For me, when I first bought Bloodborne years ago around the game's release, I had a very hard time getting through it. Honestly, I got through about 30 minutes of the game and just decided, you know what, this isn't the game for me. I had bought it online, so I couldn't return it. I didn't play the game at all. Years later, I decided to give the game a chance once again. Got a little bit further than last time. Then I got lost. I didn't know where to go. There's no waypoints, objectives. I was like, man, how do I navigate this game? This is very difficult. But then all that changed when Elden Ring came out. Elden Ring was all the craze. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to give Elden Ring a chance. I played that game and it gave me the same feeling that I got from something like Skyrim or Zelda. Like, wow, this is a game that's very massive, very big. But the difference that that game had is that it was very difficult. And similar to the other From Software games, they don't give you a lot of leeway on where to go. But I decided to stick that game out, and overall, I dumped hundreds of hours into that game, and I loved it. Eventually, platinum the game on PlayStation as well. And after that, I decided, you know what? I'm going to tackle Bloodborne again. So I gave it a shot, played that game again, and this time I had a different approach, had a different mindset with the game. And when I went in knowing, you know what, no matter what this game gives me, I'm going to go throughout and make it to the end because I have to. And normally, I feel like if you give yourself that mindset, it makes you feel like you're doing it because you have to do it, and it doesn't give you that satisfaction. But man, after I got through the game and started to learn the mechanics again and understand it, I truly loved it. I looked back and thought, wow, I really deprived myself of this game for years, all because I didn't want to change my mindset of gaming. And when I got through the end of Bloodborne, and especially when I got through the DLC, I was left craving for more. And I'm now like the other fans, hoping and praying that Sony gives us a remastered or a sequel that'll probably never come. But that leads me into my number 2, which is Sekiro. Now Sekiro, I decided to give this game a shot after I played Bloodborne, and then I played through Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3. I decided, you know what? Let's give Sekiro a go. And man, Sekiro was probably the hardest game out of any of these I had for me. This game, unlike those, was so difficult because I had the ingrained concept of how all of those games play. Sekiro plays so much differently in the combat and aesthetics and the move systems that you have. Man, it took me forever to get the Makiri counter down. But once I did, that increased my love for the game because now I feel like I was actually learning rather than just fighting through combat, going through experiences, and just overcoming difficult enemies just through rolling and attacking and figure out enemy movement patterns. Now I'm actually learning mechanics that'll help me make the game better. I felt my improvement. I was able to see myself actually get better. And I still remember when I first faced Genichiro on top of the tower. That was one of the greatest boss fights ever in gaming for me. And it's still probably my favorite boss fight in that game, even though there are many others that are much better than that. Because at that point in the game, I truly felt the learning curve actually impact me. After defeating that boss, the rest of the game didn't feel easy, but it felt like I was up to the task. I now had confidence in myself, like, yes, I'm definitely going to beat this game. And just like Bloodborne before, and pretty much every other From Software game, I went ahead and platinum Sekiro as well. And every time I play through the game and its challenges, I love it even more. But with all that being said, my number 1 game is probably the game I played the most in my life. It's a game that I played so much with a character I love so much that honestly, I know probably the entire dialogue of the game. I played at least 30 plus times throughout my childhood. I would just play this game, beat it, speedrun it, go back to it. And that game is Batman Arkham City. Like I said, I played Arkham City so many times, and I love comics, and Batman is arguably probably my favorite comic book character of all time. And I remember when this game released, it was everything to me. I loved Arkham Asylum, and when I saw the commercials and trailers for this game, like my jaw dropped as a kid. I didn't even have to beg my parents to give me this game. They just knew from how much I loved the character and how much I loved the other game. That on this initial release, it was just like a no-brainer that my parents would get the game for me, and it was just one of the greatest things ever. I played this game so many times. But I remember as a kid specifically, like Skyrim, which released the same year as this game, I didn't play Skyrim until about a year after that game's release. Because of a game like Batman Arkham City, it just took up all my time. I'm also a big fan of the Uncharted series, and I remember Uncharted 3 released this same year. I didn't even care about that game when Arkham City was around. Well, when I knew about Batman Arkham City, that was like my main focus. Like, okay, I can only get so many games per year, and this is going to be one of those no matter what. And I played through Arkham City so much This game also got me into my love for YouTube as well, because around the time this game's released, I'll also just go on YouTube and watch other people play the game, even though I had already beaten the game like 2 or 3 times, just because I wanted to see how much someone else loved the game like me. And this is probably the first time I actually would watch walkthroughs or gameplay views of others. It made me appreciate how the game can impact other people, how they would get through it. This game has some great boss fights, great moments. I love feeling like I really felt like Batman, utilizing all of his gadgets to get through Arkham City, overcoming Hugo Strange, and defeating Ra's al Ghul at the end. But truly, what made this game stand out to me as a kid is when they killed the Joker. To me, that was like the most mind-boggling thing ever. I remember when Arkham Knight trailer was released and I saw Joker was in the trailer. I was like, okay, that makes sense. They can't keep that character going forever. And it's just like Mark Hamill's Joker is iconic, and he was at probably his best ever in this game. I really love it. Can't forget Kevin Conroy's Batman, truly incredible talent. He's really one of the greatest voice actors of our time. And when this game released, it was everything to me. And I still play it to this day. And I'll probably play it again after talking about it in this video. But overall, these are my top 10 favorite games of all time. Like I said, a lot of this is nostalgia based and replayability based, but I truly do love each of these games. I feel like every year I always find a game that I truly love and appreciate. And 2023 itself was just an amazing year with amazing games. And I just felt the need. So you know what? Not only should I talk about some of my favorite games of 2023, but just of all time. So comment down below, what's your favorite game of all time and why? And what game you look forward to playing the most in 2024 and beyond?